On today's episode of Tony's Fords and Mustangs, we're going to talk about the EcoBoost, the 2.3 liter, 140 cubic inch engine that I think is a legitimate consideration for any Mustang purchaser. So let's get into the history of the 2.3. It was first introduced as a single overhead cam in 1974 in the Mustang 2, or at least in the Mustang line, in the Mustang 2. You saw a second variation when the Fox came out in 1979. It was marketed as a Cobra. It was a 2.3 liter turbo. And back then you had the turbo lag, and anyone that's ever played flag football know what one Mississippi is. Well, that's pretty much what you had to count to before your turbo kicked in 1979. They also had issues with oil problems, oil leakage, so they weren't too heralded then. In 1984, Ford introduced an intercooled sequential fuel injected 2.3, and that was popped in the SVO. It initially put out 175 horsepower. In 1985, that horsepower was boosted to 210, and that car was met with a pretty decent reception. Although it was a very expensive car in Ford's lineup, it was priced several $1,000s higher than the GT. And then in 86, you saw the final edition of the 2.3 intercooled in the Mustang SVO. That somehow they lost 5 horses. It was back down to 205. Now we're going to fast forward all the way to today. In the S550 in 2015, the EcoBoost was introduced. Now this is a double overhead cam, dual scroll turbo. The turbo lag's no longer an issue. It's a 300 horsepower engine that produces 350 foot-pounds of torque, and it's low-end horsepower, low-end torque, so no longer is there a turbo lag. The big thing about that is you lose 300 pounds when you go to an EcoBoost, and Ford's added plenty of performance options for the 2.3. There's the Roush editions, there's Performance Pack, they have a handling pack, and it's still priced several $1,000s less than the GT. Those cars can become very competent, I think, track performing cars on road courses. So as far as the handling aspect, that 300 pounds that you're going to not see in a GT, it's directly over the front axle. So that's where you're saving weight. So it's a viable performance car. And I know a lot of the V8 folks give the EcoBoost people a hard time. But if you think about it, if you took that EcoBoost Mustang and looked at it as a standalone car, if it wasn't compared to the GTs and Mach 1s and GT 500s, which it always will be. But if you just looked at it as a standalone performance coupe, I think it would be considered, a decent option. I'm going to introduce you to Gan as a friend of mine. He's got an EcoBoost. His big thing was he wanted a drop top and he wanted it to be affordable. And I think the EcoBoost drop top kind of solved all those problems for him. He's got a car that he uses as a Grand Tour and he enjoys it.
Hi, my name's Gan, and I'm the owner of a 2018 Ford Mustang EcoBoost convertible. I affectionately refer to it as the Rally North America version, otherwise known as rental car spec. I bought the car in June of 2019 in preparation for the New England Rally. I'm the second owner. It was originally owned by Enterprise Rental Car. We were surprised. We took it out for a test drive, and we were really surprised by how well it drove and how fast that the EcoBoost motor really was. My friend had a 600 horsepower ZL1 Camaro, and he was amazed by how well this did. I surprised my wife by bringing it home. At that point, that was the 5th car, and we only had 2 drivers in the house, but she really liked it. And afterwards, Doug and I took it on the rally, and we had an absolute blast. We spent a week in it. We got almost 30 miles to the gallon on the highway when we were driving up and coming back. It had a lot of space, a lot of extra space on the inside where we could stow our stuff. It's not a compact car, and it drives really well. It's a grand touring car. It's not the Mustang GT, but it still has that touring style. We had a blast. We were following up. We were following the Corvettes and a host of other cars and keeping up with them when we did Watkins Glen. It's another thing that surprised me. So yeah, we had a great time with it on the rally. So after I brought the car home, my wife reminded me that this was the second convertible that we had in our collection. I didn't really need it, but I'm really a big fan of convertibles. I just like driving around with the top down. I will do it in the fall. I'll do it in the winter time. That's a big draw to this car for me. I really enjoy the paint as well. I love the color on it, and I love the accents with the black wheels. After the rally, I really enjoyed diving into modifying the car. That's one of the great things about the EcoBoost is there's so many different ways of tuning it and modifying it. So I ended up reaching out to Bill at CJ's, and he provided me some guidance. I ended up upgrading the front intercooler on the car so it was larger, and I did the Ford Performance tune, which brought the horsepower from 310 horsepower up to 350 horsepower and over 400 pounds of torque. So this thing really moves now. Between the intercooler and that, I happened to find somebody who is getting rid of their stock wheels off their GT, and I bought them off them for cheap, and I think the blue with the black looks fantastic. I did a front strut brace to tighten up the suspension, and I've really felt that how it really impacts when we're driving on the tracks. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun just adding to it, and it's an inexpensive platform really to add to. There's all sorts of stuff out there for the S550, and you can buy it at the price, or you always find people who are selling off their parts, and you can probably get them for about half price. And I've done that for a couple of different items. So I'm pretty non-denominational about owning cars. In the past 30 years, I've owned European cars, I've owned Japanese sports cars, and I've had a collection of American cars as well. One of the things I absolutely love about this is how well, and I was surprised by, is how well it handles and compares and holds up to some of the European cars that I've owned. I was in the military and I was stationed in Europe a few years back, and I was fortunate enough to take my tuned BMW on Spa track and the Nuremberg ring, and driving this makes me just as happy as that 400 horsepower BMW did. Yeah, this compares to Porsche convertibles I've had in the past. I think the technology in the last 10 years has really come up, and this is, for the price, this is a fantastic platform, and I'm really happy with what it offers me.
Hey, so thanks for watching another edition. Nobody ever watches the end screen. That's what my analytics tell me. But anyways, there's other videos here, a subscribe thing here, or it could be subscribe thing here, and other videos there. Not really sure. Appreciate you. We'll see you next time. So long.